Alright, quiet down now. We open our session like any good game of D&D should, at the Lazy Oak, a local tavern. Your hero, Mark, is Vasil, a retired soldier now working out of your own smithy. As you drink with a group of friends, Hristo said, "Did you hear about the Dirkle kid in Rostoka, a village nearby? His mother trapped him in an oven and burned him alive. She must have gone mad, because she was raving about how it was okay because it wasn't really her child at all. It was some sort of monster that replaced her beloved son."
She needs to be locked up.
Yodan remarks, "Really? That makes the second one this month. A father in Morovia stabbed his 8-year-old boy in the heart with a pair of iron scissors. He told the authorities the same thing, that it's okay because it wasn't his son at all, but a monster sucking out the very life out of his mother."
Sounds like this is a comedy.
You get up from the table saying how it chills you to think of these poor innocent children being cut down by their own parents, the ones who are supposed to protect them. After shaking your head, you tell your 4 friends that you must get up early in the morning to help Marika and Ivan, who are your sister and her husband, put in a new fence on their family farm. And you bid your friends a good night. As you get up at dawn, with the story from the night before still very much present in your mind, you fix yourself a light breakfast and think, oh, how it will be nice to see your sister and her happy family. And with this new sense of hope, you set off for Marika's. You arrive safely and are greeted by Marika and Ivan, who both look very happy to see you. With a big smile on your face, you say, "Ah, sister," and give her a hug.
Sounds like me.
You notice that she's looking a little pale, though. You're about to greet Ivan when you see Pieta, the 6-year-old daughter, dancing towards you, singing, "Uncle Vasil." You see the faces on your sister and her husband immediately drop. She gives you a great big hug. Looking up at you, she says, "Did you know that the human body can have up to 270 bones?" And with that little fun fact, she runs off.
She's like the kid from Jerry Maguire.
You notice she had a bit of red crust stuck on the corner of her mouth. Ivan says, "Come on, let's get to work and get this new fence in." You go with him as Marika takes your horse. While you are installing the fence, you notice a solemn look on Ivan's face. You try to start up a conversation about anything, really, but you're met with quick answers like, "Yep, uh-huh," and "oh." You ask if there's anything wrong. He says, "No, nothing. Just tired, that's all." But you can tell that there's something more. Just before the nightfall, as you are finishing up, Marika, with a sad look on her, hands you your horse off to you. After walking up the path with your sister, you ask her if everything is all right. She looks down and says, with tears in her eyes, says, "No, I think that there's something wrong with Pieta." You ask her if you think she's sick.
It's not the water.
Marika says, "No, she's just that she hasn't been acting like herself lately. For example, she seems to be more bubbly and have knowledge of things that no little girl should, while at the same time not knowing simple things about her own life. When I told her you were coming here today, she looked confused on who you even were." You tell Marika that's just how children are. She's at that age now where she's growing up fast and she's going through Marika cuts you off and says, "No, that's not it. Remember when Pieta's arm was cut open by that broken window? I checked. Her scar is gone. I don't think that's my daughter. I don't think that's Pieta." With the wind blowing Marika's blouse, you see a red circle of bumps upon her heart. With a worried look in your eye, you tell her not to do anything rash, that you will get to the bottom of this immediately. And as you hug your sister goodbye, you have a dark feeling that something terrible is about to happen. Well, Marco, would you play this one shot?
Yes. It sounds like a little vampire child is drinking my sister's blood.
Yeah,
her real daughter's
something's
gone.
going on, that's for sure.
Well, with the red circles on her heart, and
yeah,
the red crust on the little kid's lip.
Yeah,
sounds very vampirish to me.
Yeah, or some kind of creature that's replacing children, maybe, and the only way to kill them is with fire or iron.
An evil pedophile. Actually, I think most monsters, that I think evil in D&D is often too pure, and a lot of times, if I'm DMing, which is usually the case, unless I'm playing with you, then it seems like, well, I'm always trying to make evil more corrupt, right? Because that's what evil is to me. Evil isn't just wearing a black cape and laughing on a mountain as you like ruin the economy of your local village. You know what I mean?
But that's the fun evil, right? That's the commercial evil, I should say.
Well, that's almost not evil.
No,
in a way, it's too common of a human.
Well, what I like about what I just kind of wrote was that the monster really is just a creature trying to live its life too. You know, this is how it survives, right?
Do you sympathize with your creatures?
Why not? They're like any other kind of living creature, right? They're like a dog. You know, they just want to live.
They're just in your habitat.
Right, and they're invading your habitat.
They're predators in your habitat.
Yeah. So to you they're evil because they're disrupting your life. But within their own society, they're not really evil.
I agree. It's that mentality. That mentality makes me laugh when it's applied to like science fiction, where human astronauts land on a planet and they call everything there an alien when they're the aliens. You know what I mean? Like everything there is indigenous to the planet they're going to.
There's like a 2010 or something like that animation where an astronaut goes to a planet and he's like, oh, there's aliens everywhere. And they're like, actually, you're the alien.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a good point.
It is, yeah. But if you look at like old science fiction, human domain is just wherever humans are, I guess. But that derails a little from what you're talking about, I guess. I would play that. Of course, I'd play anything D&D. Doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter how, uncommon or different it is from your normal tropes of fantasy. I don't really care. I find it interesting either way.
Yeah, I figured I'd lean heavy into the opening with a tavern. Just like that's how it always.
Every good adventure starts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean taverns are I don't know, like that is probably that's one of the strongest tropes in any medieval fantasy RPG. Or just
it's where all the information is. It's where you go to start the D&D game, right?
Well, I mean, if I think about a lot of the little adventures I've had in my life, the side quests, let's call them, they mostly started in bars.
I like yours,
taverns.
The one where you're walking down the street and Snapchatting it, and then everyone's trying to figure out where you are, but no one knows.
Oh, yeah. Don't give me social media when I'm drunk and lost. Actually, I wasn't lost. Like my body knew where to go. It knew north. So it started going north.
It's important. I don't know my cardinal directions when I'm in the world without a device.
Really?
Yeah, I need something to tell me where I'm facing. Like a compass at least.
You're not the first person to tell me that.
I mean, I know that the sun sets from east to west. But other than that, I can't really tell you.
I think it's really important too.
Well, I think it is too. I think it's a skill I wish I had. But
my father made sure that me and my brother, and he tried with my sister, to make sure that we always knew what direction, how to tell, bearing and direction, or just direction at least, so that we would never truly be lost. And it has helped me because I was driving before the days of GPS.
Yeah.
I remember riding with my father. He was a courier. He would drive 16-hour days every day in his car. So sometimes the only time I could spend with him was on my school summer breaks, and I would just go to the day at work with Dad, and it was in the car that whole time. And I would learn how to read a map. And
that's cool though that you got to spend that kind of time with him.
It was cool. I looked forward to it. It was almost like a mini vacation.
I used to go on with my dad when he would substitute for bus driving, and I'd go with him on those sometimes because my mom would have to go into work, and then I'd have to go with my dad while my mom worked nights. And my dad was finishing up his, because he had like 4 jobs at once. Man, it was crazy. He had his main job as like a draftsman, right? So he would make parts for trains, and then he would substitute bus driving, which I would tag along with him sometimes, and then he'd also work at a pizza place or two.
Jeez.
It's like, Jesus,
making every dollar he can for his family.
Yeah, he was a dedicated man for sure.
It's inspiring. It teaches you a lesson. It's one thing no matter how hard I work in my life, at times, even in those times, I think about the stories of my grandmother, or even my mother and father, just people before me, what they had to go through just to make ends meet. So I'm always thankful for that.
Yeah.
But, boy, it's getting real in here. Let's get back to D&D.
All right. Why do you play D&D?
Well, I play D&D for the simple reason, like I think most people play D&D, it lets your imagination free. It lets you tell a story, I love telling, in a weird way, I love telling made up stories more than I do real stories. And I have probably as many real stories to tell as I do fake ones, if that makes any sense.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know why that might, I guess, to me, my life stories are just things that happen to me. So to me, they're really usually not exciting.
Right.
But I've had other people tell me like, no, you should talk about that. You should make a podcast about that. But to me, what's exciting is what my imagination can come up with. And D&D is really fun. It's really good at letting you do that. And in a weird way, it helps you relax too. It sort of breaks the ice on the awkwardness that comes with sharing your imagination or being creative, like being an artist around other people, like streaming your art, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. It's like,
it's improv acting pretty much the whole time as a DM or as a player. It definitely that's what's really fun is that you just get to let your mind kind of go into this other world and then experience it. And if you have a good enough, imagination or you practice enough, you can experience a lot through that.
You can, and I feel like I helped talk you into DMing. So now that you've DM'd and played, which do you like better?
It's like, as a saying, apples to oranges, I think. Because having a character is awesome because you get to build one thing and focus on that. But what's really fun about DMing is that you're never bored during a session. You're never at a lull.
You're always thinking.
You're always conversing with the players, and you're always trying to move the story along or like
and problem solving on the spot.
Yeah, and that's
exercise.
That's one of my favorite things about a lot of art mediums is the problem solving aspect. Like 3ds Max, that's my favorite thing about 3D modeling is that there's so many ways to do the same thing as they say there's 100 ways to skin a cat, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just fun when one way doesn't work and then you're like, okay, I got to find another way. And then you find that way and it's like so rewarding.
Oh, I agree.
And you learn more each time. It's like, this is like the best.
I agree because to add to that, one thing I love is when there's a problem and many people say, well, that's like almost like it's an element of nature. Well, fire is fire and this problem's the problem. It can't be solved. It's like, no, it can be solved and I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. And that's exciting. Yeah, I agree. And DMing is definitely like that. It's a great exercise in multitasking and problem solving. So it's a tool in that way.
Yeah. Have you ever taken any skills that you've learned in D&D into the real world? Oh,
all the time, especially what I learn about people. And that may sound funny because if you're playing D&D, you're technically supposed to be role playing, right? Pretending to be someone you aren't, but that is so far from the truth. I feel like most people are just being themselves. They're letting loose. They're unedited.
Yeah, it's personas. Like almost like they're like when you're drunk and you let thoughts. It is a little bit like free.
That. It can be. Yeah, it comes out in your character, especially if you get comfortable. It comes out, and yeah, no, I use it. I learn from it all the time, and I apply what I learn in other situations in life to D&D when I play, and vice versa. And you definitely learn about. That's why I like to play with new groups and new people, and even complete strangers, because you never know what kind of person you're going to meet, and it's always a learning experience. It's always enlightening.
Yeah, no, I've learned how to negotiate a little better
with people.
Yeah, with people
because of DMing.
Because not just DMing, but just as a player character. One time I was at a hotel and we had this coupon, but they wouldn't accept the free night stay or something like that. So. My girlfriend at the time, she walked out and she went to go get some information from the car. It's like, no, this is legit and all that stuff. And the guy was just like, he was not having a good day. So I'm like, hey man, how you doing? You getting off soon? It's like, yeah, luckily I am. I've been working all day. And he just opened up once I started asking him about himself. And then he was like, yeah, it's no problem. We'll just get this whole thing squared away. And fix the problem instantly. Yep. It was so good. I was like, wow, I just learned subterfuge from DMing or playing.
That's a really good example. That's a really good example because I agree. So I think of it as like manipulation, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
but it's a good.
But it's like it was good for both parties. Right. I got what I wanted, and he lightened up.
You snapped him out of himself.
Yeah, because he was just in this funk, and he was not having a good day. He was already worked like 12 hours and was at one hotel. Now he's at this hotel.
And maybe nobody spoke to him in any simple, real sense.
Or as a
you
person,
came along.
right?
That's
People,
what I mean.
you don't talk to the people that you're asking a service from. You don't really usually talk to them as people. You talk to them as as an entity that owes you the thing that you want.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and to me, it's like almost like a simple courtesy. It feels like that's the courtesy, right? That's the way to be in a weird way. And what I mean is, because if you treat someone quietly and non-directly, and they do the same for you, then all that happens is the service, and that way no drama occurs. Right. So I feel like a lot of people...
But generally, that's what I want.
Generally, I think that's what everybody wants, even the person committing the service.
Yeah.
But every now and then...
It's good to be recognized that you're a human.
To interact, man. Like
they're not androids, as we were talking about before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with it. And I feel like I apply it even more now. And especially now in 2020 with the way life has changed for at least hopefully temporarily for most of us here in the West, and specifically the Midwest. If it's any different anywhere else in the world, I wouldn't know. But it has definitely like broken down on that social interaction. I almost feel, because I go on social media more than I've ever have in my life.
Really?
And it feels like an outcry for attention, more so than before, where people are just hungry for touch. They're hungry for, face to face, and whether they know it or not, it comes across that way to me in their expressions.
Yeah, they're just like crying out into the void for someone
that's how I see it. Yeah,
to call back. Yeah, it's kind of tough in the way we're living right now with the whole social distancing. I think that a lot of people that are recluse haven't really changed much, but you can definitely see it that like people have become a little more antsy, if you will.
Definitely. Right. But hey, it's great for D&D.
Yes, it is.
There's lots of time to play D&D when you're on unemployment or you're just sitting at home or working from home. You can squeeze in a session here or two. But yeah, which is funny because we haven't played in a long time.
I know, it's very frustrating. Like our whole group is like one person's gone at least once a week, and it's hard to can't really continue the story when you're missing a group.
Well, that's why lately I've been more about, I think one shots can be more fun sometimes than like a campaign. Campaign's a lot to like commit to.
Yeah, but I like the campaign because then you're developing your character each time. I guess you could use the same character for every one shot and say that's his canon history, and you're just playing at different moments in his life.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's all just to sit down and have a good time anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what is at the core of playing pen and paper games is really socializing.
Yeah, that's the main reason I play D&D, is to hang out with friends. I like D&D, it's cool, but we could be playing any other game or doing anything else.
Well, the
point is to hang out with my friends, and this just happens to be a byproduct, but it's a fun byproduct. It's like I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh for that reason. I actually hate Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah, the card game.
I never got into those like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Magic the Gathering.
Well, like
it's all similar kind of like basis.
Mike mocks me. He's like, "Well, that's before your time, old man." But
not Magic. I don't
even
think
that is. Yeah, Magic. I grew up with Magic, and I never got into that.
Yeah.
I know. To me, it's all pay to win, right? You got to like spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars to get the best cards for the best decks.
Yeah, but then that's Warhammer too, right? It's very much like that.
No, it isn't, because even though Warhammer is ridiculously expensive, especially now, tabletop war games are limited by your points that you spend creating your army. So if someone spent $1,000 on their army and his buddy spent $500, you're really just limited to that 500 army. It doesn't matter that you have all those extra troops, because you can only spend what the agreed upon point value.
Really?
Yeah. So like, for example, if a large battle, like we used to do large battles, which were 2,000 point, army battles, which means the battle itself, if it was 2 players, is 4,000 points.
Okay.
And they would take 2 to 3 days because, man, we argue a lot and sort of, play casually.
Right.
And that's a big game. I mean, if I have 2,000 points to spend on my army in version, I don't know, 5, let's say, or 6, I'm fielding everything in my book, and sometimes in copious amounts. So you have to go through and roll and check and do the rules for every single unit that you put on the field. But you're limited by that point value, right?
Okay.
So that is very different. But whereas like competitive card games, yes, what I really like about them is that the deck building is cool. Like, the tactics involved of trying to it's almost like
optimize
chess, to think ahead. Yeah, you want to optimize your hand so
without having too much, so you can actually draw what you want instead of drawing things you don't necessarily
and have
need.
the advantages that you in the combos you want to play.
Right.
But what I don't like is that you like chess, it's mathematical, so that means that the best possible combinations can be controlled monetarily by the who produces the cards. And that's what they do. They make sure that the best cards are rare and that they're worth a lot of money. So if someone spends more money on their deck than I did, they're going to win. So it's weighted in their favor. That's what I don't like.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, but there are different card games where you both play off the same deck, and you're like drawing from that, and you're like buy. So I like those a lot more.
Yeah,
because they're a lot more freeform. They don't take as much pre-planning and trying to develop your deck and all that other stuff. It's a lot more easier.
Those are more casual. They're about the simple fun, I think.
And that's what I like, because that's the whole reason I'm playing the games again, is to hang out with my friends. So I don't want to like have all this like. I'm already kind of competitive in nature, so I don't need that extra competition with like trying to come up with the best thing possible and then getting upset when it doesn't work out the way I wanted it to.
I
and
can't
it's
even play.
Jeez.
It's overwhelming. I know.
Yeah.
I've broken controllers and keyboards playing PC, shooter games, like competitive shooter games, PvP and stuff.
Yeah, I can't.
That's why I stay away from those games now, because I know, dude, I was dumb. I would do that shit, I'd be do like a 12, 14-hour day of work, come home, then do that shit, and get completely stressed out, and then try to sleep, and it's not a good idea.
Yeah, the video games I play are like story-based.
Yeah,
that's so
relaxing.
Yeah, they're like
a movie.
Yes, that's what I want in my video game, is a movie. I mean, I would like Final Fantasy because that's what it is pretty much. They're like long movies, but it's just turn-based most of the time, and I don't have the patience for that.
Well, one of my favorite things about D&D is the storytelling. Is that how you look at when you play a session, as like a movie? Are you trying to?
Yeah, I'm trying to picture it and like, well, if I'm DMing, I'm trying to tell a story, and I'm also trying to incorporate your actions into my story, right? So like, both of our worlds are making one world. What
kind of player is the most frustrating to you?
Ones who don't pay attention and like diddle on their phone.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, why are you here?
That came up in the D&D Next subreddit recently. That's why I brought it up, because somebody was complaining that, he had a player tell him, because in the perspective of the DM, the poster was the DM, and he said that he had a player who was on their phone all the time, and that he was only doing it while other people were taking their turns. And I personally hate that, because you should be paying attention if you're interested.
Yeah.
The whole time, because there's a story unfolding around you.
Well, even if it's just like combat, like you need to know what you're going to do next and what the person before you just did. Like you need to know those things so you can play strategically. Like that's another thing, is when people get bored and they just start doing things willy-nilly and they don't really think about what their actions are going to do and the consequences of it. And they don't use any strategy when they do any fights or anything like that.
Well, yeah, but how can you engage in what's going on around you when you're not paying attention?
Yeah, and then your mindscape goes too. Like it's all gone. Yeah. Like you don't have any. Like where's your involvement now? Where's your headspace?
I actually consider it rude, especially to the DM, because the DM's the one who put all the work together.
It is a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot more than I thought it was.
Oh yeah,
it's a
lot of writing. You lose hours and hours setting up shit. Yeah,
I mean it's cool because you're creating something, which is just fun. It's just fun to create. But it's also like, hey man, I did this for you, and now you're just like on your phone. Like, come on, let's like have this time together.
In the future, I'm gonna go back. Yeah, the next time I DM in person,
just like
it's gonna be pencil and paper.
Yeah, no phones allowed.
No phones, no digital devices of any
kind. I think
kind.
that's a good idea. I like that.
Like, you have your ring. If your phone is on for emergencies, if you think you're gonna have one, then put it in your pocket with the ringer on. Otherwise,
or just on vibrate. Yeah,
just leave it alone. Don't take it out to text or nothing. Like, I mean, and how hard is that really to just say, look, for the next 3 to 4 hours, I'm not going to use my phone? Is that really so difficult?
No, I don't think it is, because when I hang out with someone, I don't I don't go on my phone.
Yeah.
When I'm with someone, when I'm watching a movie or when I'm just like hanging out, my phone is in my pocket. The only time I ever like pull it out is if I do get a call and I need to take it because I got things going on.
Right. Yeah.
But
might be a booty call. You can't miss that.
I as a DM use my phone a lot though to get the monsters and get the actual stats. That's what I use it for.
I think it is okay. I would say it's okay for the DM as long as he's not texting, Snapchat or Tinder while he's DMing.
Yeah, I think that some people also use their phone for like for messages, for like secret messages between the DM and the player. They'll do that. And
I don't care even for that. Go back to, I used to have like notes in my notepad. Yeah. And I went through a lot of paper writing out notes for different players and things like that. The way I made it, the way I would do it is like, rather than making it completely out of character and then just people thinking, meta about what's going on, like, okay, obviously the DM is communicating with this player like in secret, then it would be only when the NPC actually hands them something, right? So the NPC, like if he was a sly character like an informant or something, he'd be pretending to sell oranges, and as he handed the player, I would have like a prop, and as I handed the prop over to the player,
so cool.
I had the little message folded and secreted with the orange, right? Yeah. So that way, if they wanted, they could read it in front of their friends, right? And I would consider that in character,
right?
But if they wanted to keep it secret, they'd feel it and they go, "Oh, I got a message," and they look underneath the table.
Oh, wow!
And they read what it says. So now
cool.
they know something that the rest of the party doesn't. And I did that on like persuasion rolls and like diplomacy rolls. Not intimidation, but diplomacy and persuasion. But bluff and intimidation, this is going to 3.5 D&D. Bluff and intimidation to me were more of like a visual effect, right? Because like when you intimidate someone, it's not always like, barking like a dog or roaring like a lion. Sometimes you intimidate someone with your power, right? The weight behind your words can be very intimidating,
right?
And
like if the president of the United States comes up to you and starts talking, you're going to be maybe not intimidated,
you're
but
on
you're
your
going
guard.
to feel
no matter who
like,
you are,
okay,
like your spine is going to vibrate a little bit. I don't care who you are, unless you're psychopathic, but that's not on your control. So, so that's how I looked at that. And the same thing with bluff. Bluff is sort of like a politician telling you one thing. Okay, we're getting political now, but yeah, someone telling you something but meaning something else, right? Yeah. Just like distracted conversation or meaning. So so on persuasion and diplomacy checks, that's what I tried to do. I wasn't always perfect at it, but I feel like that's how I learned how to hand off drugs. Like I should have been a dealer because like I can like do that shit from DMing. So another life skill from D&D.
How to deal drugs.
With oranges.
That's one of the things I've been wanting to do is add more props in my D&D.
Props add a lot. Because music and one thing, go ahead.
I use music a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite things is to have like a speaker going while we're playing. It really sets that tone and the atmosphere. It really helps.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start, I've been learning Japanese, so I've been practicing writing a lot. So I have all these notes and like pieces of cardboard and just strewed across my room.
Japanese gotten great, yeah.
And so I want to use those and just throw them to the party. And it's like you find these in a room, just scattered around. It's like have them decide what these mean. Does this mean that this is just something like it could be like abyssal, right? You could pretend that that's the language it's in. So they would have to decipher if this means that they were trying to learn abyssal, and why would this person be trying to learn abyssal, the language of a demon?
Do you like your players to be more investigative like that? Do you feel?
I think that's important. I think that's what's fun. Who cares about rolls, right? Who cares about like the math of your game?
Oh, you mean rolls as in rolling the dice?
Right, that's what I mean. Sorry, the math, like the stats of like the monster versus your roll to hit and all that stuff. Like that's boring. What's
some people
fun?
Find that really important.
I know some people like it, but for me, what's fun is the actual like role play aspect. Yeah. Is the
story?
Yes, the story. That's what's entertaining. That's what's engaging. That's what's enveloping of your like your soul and like your identity. And it's like, okay, I am this guy, right? And I got to figure out why this man just murdered an entire town, like, and how he did it.
Well, that's how like when I have a party of murder hobos and they only care about their roles, but I'm just trying to tell a story. I feel like that old like joke that my grandmother would tell where she'd say, bird and a fish can fall in love, but where will they live? That's how I feel as a DM with my players sometimes.
Wow,
It's like,
that's a really cool saying.
yeah, I know. I love it too.
How do you say it in Bulgarian? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay, because your grandmother's Bulgarian.
My
so I
favorite
thought she might have
Bulgarian,
said it.
she's got several, but my favorite that I always say to her, we say to each other when I see her, is Borbaja Zevut, which just means fight for life.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, never
like
give
it.
up, basically.
Yeah, that's one of my mottos. Is
Yeah.
never give up, never surrender.
Always work. Fight for life, fight for what you want.
Yeah, it's important
So,
because
it
once
is.
you lose that fight, then it's just a downhill.
What are you living for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you stop moving, and once you stop moving, your body just deteriorates, and it's just like, yeah, it's downhill. And you gotta always be fighting to always be surviving.
I agree, and that's kind of like, So if you look at a party of murder hobos, right?
Okay.
Which is just, anyone listening to games knows what that is. Basically, it's characters or players who use their characters just to kill and loot. Like, they don't care about moral choices or things like that.
Right.
But what I try to do often, if I have like a party like that, is trick them into a moral decision that catches them off their guard. Like when I did that, if you remember, we were playing with, Mike, Sarah, and Alec,
Mm-hmm.
and you, and it was my campaign. I had you guys up in the mountains, and you came across a large creature, but it looked like a child of a large creature. Right?
Oh,
It ended
yeah.
up being a baby ogre. Like
Yeah,
a young
that was
ogre,
really cool.
like a child ogre. Right, but Mike jumped right away to kill it.
Yeah, and I tried to stop him.
But after Sarah was upset with him, both in and out of character, I could see in his face that he stopped to think about it, even though he was still defending his stance. It's like, it's a monster.
Yeah.
I do feel like he had the thought, like, well, yeah, it's a monster, but it's a child.
Yeah, but
And I hope he had that thought, because otherwise he's a cool
because then we found its mother, right? And we had to fight. No, we fought the mother first. That's what it was, and then we found the baby.
Yeah, and then
we're
the child as well.
Yeah, and then we had to kill, and then he decided to kill the child not only because it was a monster, but how would it survive on its own because it's a baby? I was like, I mean, that's a good point. But
reason his murder into mercy, or his mercy into murder.
Have you ever had to kill an animal because as it was dying like that?
Yeah.
That's so sad. I saw it done once. There was a raccoon with a broken leg that once it fell off a fence, and then my dad was like, we had to like end its suffering. It was like as a child, I was probably 8 when I saw this.
I think it was about the same age, actually.
It was really profound as like a as a kid.
It hit
like
your gut.
Well, I was just like, it was a whole new understanding of life that like a mercy killing is a thing and what that means, and like it's like, yeah, but I mean, again, it applies to D&D, like what we did, what Mike did. We decided it was a mercy killing at the end.
Yeah, and that's what interests me a lot about playing D&D, and something I pay attention anyway to, the mannerisms and idiosyncrasies of people. I love to people watch. I love to learn from that. And D&D is really great for it, because when people play D&D, when players play D&D, no matter how tightly wound they are, they eventually relax. They get to a point where they feel comfortable, and they open up more about their inner personas by applying them to their character.
Yeah.
And some characters, so like the way I look at it, and you can tell me what you think, is there's two types of role players. There's role players who are like, I would say I fall into the first category. There's role players that use their different personas to play with different ideas of character.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you do a good job of playing different types of character.
Thank you, man. And I enjoy that. So, I like to play and test the different parts of me in my characters, right? Both emotionally and intelligently. And then the second category of role player, I would say, is the person who is, regardless of character choice, the same person spiritually, like morally.
Yeah, they play
always
themselves for the most part.
They really do. They play themselves.
Which I think I kind of do.
Yeah.
I think I play myself the most because I'm always like chaotic neutral as an alignment. Mm-hmm. Which is like my character's like morals, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think that's for me. That's just easier that way. It's the easiest way to play my character because it's the most free and aligned with my own morals. So it's just way easier that way. I have played characters,
more recognizable way to introduce to role play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have played characters like couple lawful good characters, but I just don't have fun with it because it's like I feel limited and I feel like I have to do the right thing all the time, and it's like she just gets boring for me. But I feel like for some people, they actually like that constraints, and they also like playing out like how would it be to be like a Superman-esque character who's like the moral high ground, always good. Yeah.
Well, pen and paper gaming has become way more commercialized. It's been sort of like a renaissance, a resurgence of it, I would say, in like the last 5 years especially. What do you think? How do you feel about... here's what I have to say first about that before I ask you this question, is that one thing I feel it has done, especially with like, Critical Role and shows about pen and paper gaming and streaming it and things like that.
Yeah, like Stranger Things even as a...
Right, yeah, the way it's
show
found its way back into like regular media, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's now role players are very video game developed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like...
I mean, that's their experience with this generation.
Right. Like I grew up, there were video games when I was a kid too, but they were nothing like they are now. They were almost more like, I'm trying to like liken it to something comparatively, but they were just so simple. They were more simple than board games, right? When I was a kid.
Yeah,
like
they were so constrained by the technology at the time. And
so
there was no
paper,
graphics.
No, right. I mean, so pen and paper gaming was still the best graphics around, so to speak. And I still think it is today. But what I mean was nothing compared with it. Right. But now the imagination has a lot of competition, I feel.
Yes.
And I think for some people, some players, they prefer, like, maybe their imagination's weak. So the video game takes over for them in their mind.
Right.
And that translates into the kind of player that plays their characters on pen and paper more like you would a video game character.
Right.
So how do you feel, since I think you're more coming out of that generation, not that you play that way.
Right.
But since you're new to DMing with the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But that's still, that you've been DMing that whole time.
Yeah.
And do you think that's less attractive from a DM's point of view to have those kinds of players that just want to do the rolling? They just want to see the video game unfold, basically, in the gameplay.
I see. The video games I like are story based. So like hack and slash, the whole game mechanics matter a lot less to me than the story. I literally want to play an interactive movie. Like that's what I love. Like was it Dead by Dawn? That was a good one. Between Two Worlds, Heavy Rain, games like that. Those are my favorite. I really like those kinds of games. And then I also really like other games like God of War, and I like Prince of Persia. And these are like the games that made me want to become a game designer. Like that was my dream. So the story is what's important. That's the common theme about all these games, is they have a very strong story and they're character driven. So I think that's what's important in D&D, and that's what I try and convey, is that the story is what's entertaining and what is engaging, not necessarily the combat. The only reason I really do combat is because a lot of players just want to do rolls and they want to just fight, and they think that's what's fun and that's what's cool.
Do you think you could do a D&D session without
a fight?
Without rolling dice?
Without rolling dice.
What would that be? Wouldn't that just be storytelling then?
Yeah, but it would be...
Because it's more than just combat. There's skill checks.
Right.
And how clever you are as a DM and how clever the players are with their abilities.
So the game that... The one shot that I pretty much described to you in this...
The beginning of this episode?
Right. That could be accomplished without fighting, right? You could encounter the monster and not fight it, and
just
still get Petya, the little girl, back.
Right.
Like you could convince her to switch children back, and the monster mother would do that. You would just have to treat its child with the same love and kindness that you would treat your child.
But if you're with a group of players that are just never interested in that part of this or that type of solution, do you try to entice them into it? Do you keep bringing it back into the storytelling? Or
I just give them the option. I let them choose. So if they want to be hack and slash, don't care what happens in respect to their consequences of killing an important character, then so be it. Like if you killed this monster mother, you're not getting Petya back. You're not getting the little girl. She is staying in the fairy world.
What's your opinion on 5th edition D&D? Do you like it?
Yeah, I like it. It's fun. It's a lot more streamlined, which can be annoying. The first D&D I ever played was Pathfinder. That was the edition that I played, which is like what 4.5, something like that. It's like a weird like
Pathfinder is 3.5 with adjusted rules.
Okay,
That's basically what Pathfinder is.
So it's like,
at least that's how I look
it's
at
like
it.
almost a 4th edition, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it an edition. I mean, it's almost a separate game now, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is. It's D&D like evolved in a way. When it first came out, I liked Pathfinder when it first came out because the developers for 3rd edition D&D right away knew they had screwed up, and they came out with 3.5 like right after releasing 3. And I have those books. I have 3.0 books and I have 3.5 books. And 3.5 is probably one of the best editions of D&D in my opinion, having played them all.
Right.
And Pathfinder was born from basically wanting to do from editing 3.5 again.
Okay.
And when Pathfinder first came out, I liked the idea behind Pathfinder then because it simplified some of the skills, it grouped some of the skills, kind of like what 5th does.
Oh yeah, but 5th is like to an extreme, right?
Yeah, that's a problem. That's the problem I have with 5th is that 5th is great for introducing new players to D&D.
I think you're right.
But it's very much, it's funny to me because people that don't like 4th say 4th is a MOBA, that it's a design for a board game or a video game. But to me, it's more interesting and complicated and nuanced than 5th.
Yeah.
Because in 5th to me is like D&D for dummies. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter what build you have. You'll have purpose in the party.
Yeah. It's like easy mode for a D&D.
It's really easy mode. And I feel
3.5 would be like medium to hard level. Like
yeah, it just encourages
because there's a lot more.
The D&D is, the more it encourages the DM to homebrew.
The easier it is?
The more it encourages. Yeah, so like the simpler D&D, the simpler the rules are for D&D, the more at least I feel encouraged as a DM to homebrew things that are more interesting into the gameplay. Well, like for example, one of the biggest changes I don't like about 5th is the negative and positive energy plane. Right.
That's one of the things I liked a lot about Pathfinder.
It's so interesting.
You can heal a zombie with.
Well, that's a 3.5 thing.
Yeah, but you could heal him with a negative energy spell.
Well, I just like that.
And I think that's really interesting.
It is. It adds a whole new depth, like another
yeah.
world plane of element in existence. Whereas now everything is just hard coded. There's no the metaphysics, the magic from D&D and 5th is they've kind of pulled back on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And coming from someone who, I mean, in reality, I'm very non-metaphysical, right? As you know me. I'm an atheist, right? So but that doesn't mean anything to me. I just take everything at face value. I look at logic and reason and evidence. Okay. So the reason I bring that up is because on the opposite when I'm in D&D, because I love metaphysical stories, right?
Yeah.
I love like religious stories or mythological stories.
I get you.
They're so exciting.
In the same way.
Yeah. So they're fun to imagine, and that's that's why when I play D&D or I DM, which is Dungeon Master, then which is the storyteller, that's what I like to do.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. I guess it's what's interesting to me is do you entice the player to fall into the story more, or do you do like you said and just let them have their board game, video game experience?
I try and meet the middle, right? Yeah. I allow them to have what they want to do, fight and do what they want, but I also want to tell my story. So I'm going to tell my story.
Fun for you too.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm spending a lot of time creating it. So
you're spending the most time.
Yeah.
Players are just waiting to play. DMs are always playing in a way.
DMs are constantly creating. The whole week I am thinking of what I'm going to do, refining it, thinking of new scenarios that they might try.
Yeah.
And I still don't think of every scenario. I still don't think of the players always seem to do the one thing I didn't think to plan ahead of for, which is fun, which is cool. You get to think on the spot and turn it around and make it work.
I think that's what I've learned over the years from DMing is have tools that allow me to quickly adapt to the decisions players make, and going back to like D&D and the real world and how it affects it and vice versa. I've used that in job, in the work field, right, as well. Like making sure I'm ready to just adapt to the situation, like especially when I worked in construction, because it's live, right? Mm-hmm. Everything's happening now in front of me, and there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of money at risk. So you've got to make good decisions,
Yeah.
So
that's what I like is like, even though I have a plan for the session, I can still change it. Like I can still like add like little details that I didn't think of while writing. I can like in the moment. Like I don't really pre-plan a lot of dialogue. What I do is I'll think of what the character is like as a NPC. I'll think of what is their personality, what is
his
their motivation,
motives and priorities,
and exactly,
his alignment. That's all you need.
Yeah, and then when he interacts with the players, all the information I need is already there. I just have to come up with it as the character speak it. I don't have to like read off a script or anything, which is a lot easier for my mind to do, at least. Mm-hmm. It's like,
it's easy for anyone. I mean,
well, I don't know. I think a lot of people have troubles thinking on the spot and like improving.
Oh, I see.
I think that's a different. I think that's something that I'm not even great at, but it's something that I'm improving on. And that's what's easier for me.
Everything's a skill. You just got to practice.
Yeah,
that's what I believe.
Yeah. Do you think that the in-game lore is important for a new character or any character or player to know?
Well, I mean, what's important with leisure and entertainment? I look at it like this: the rules and the lore are set. They're not set in stone. They're not a Bible. They're more like a guideline.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to think, like, people have arguments all the time, like this some random dude on the internet complaining about players who think of their Warforged characters as robots. I don't care if you do that. If I'm DMing, that's fine. That's part of your fun. And really you're not totally wrong, because many Warforges from Eberron setting are portrayed as sort of robotic, right? They're programmed. They have simple drone-like, algorithms,
right?
Or
well, they're material and magic
in nature.
Meat.
Yeah, one was built to do alchemy, one was built to cook, one was built to be a soldier. So that is robotic in nature. So I don't mind if the player wants to do that.
But they got souls, right?
Yeah, I guess they do, but again, that's where do you play with that in current edition D&D for as far as metaphysics are concerned. So yeah, the lore is not that important to me. In fact, I find it more interesting when someone they're dreaming up their own story and just using the lore as sort of mile markers on the journey.
What I like to do is use the lore for people who know the lore, right? And just put little information, little like nuggets of things like
you got to do that because they've put the effort in.
Yeah, well, I like it because it's like the character or the player knows about that. If they do know about the lore, it's like a little like, oh, I get that. Okay, oh, I see what you did there. I see how you incorporated this. That's cool. It's like it adds. Agree. It gets them like more interested. It's like an Easter egg, if you will.
I think that's a really important point too, because in 3.5 the skill is called knowledge. And it just referred to like how smart your character is.
Right.
So in 5th edition, you have history.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I feel like whenever I'm watching someone online or talking to another DM, when they use their history checks or their arcana checks, they're not using them well enough. And by that I mean, it's usually just a role play response, something irrelevant maybe to the story. Like if you do like a religion or a history check, and the player succeeds, and all you tell them is that, the mural you see on the wall is a depiction of the god so-and-so, and underneath him are followers, right? I feel like there should be more to that. I think that history and arcana checks should be more like puzzle checks, and sort of giving. So if the party's trying to solve a problem, and it's puzzle in nature,
right.
Like it's complicated, then someone with good history in arcana should be sort of shortcutting the problem for the group, finding like a primer to the solution,
right?
And that's how I like to use those skills, because it's way more rewarding for the book nerd, the librarian in the group, so to speak, right? The knowledge nerd, and those players. That's how they want to be rewarded. They don't want to be rewarded with loot. They want to be rewarded with being the guy who figured it out.
Being able to use their skills.
To use their brain. You know? So That's, I think, the best way, or one of the good ways to use those skills. Don't make any skill. My main thing when I DM is don't make any skill check passive, or don't make it passively important and non-important. Like fluff, because then I feel like, to me, if I'm playing and I realize that my proficiency in history is just for fluff, it doesn't do me any good.
Yeah.
Then I'm never going to use it, or I won't care that when I do. So then that's no fun.
Do you like that the game changes with each new edition? Do you think that's
D&D?
a good thing that in D&D that the game changes a little?
I do think that's a fun idea. I don't know if it's always good. And I say that way because I like when they try new things. And that's what I liked about every edition of D&D up until 5th. 5th is just falling back on 3.5 and then smoothing it out, making the planescape for the rules, for the experience, just really easy to understand and streamlined.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that. And my bias is probably because I grew up with, 2nd edition. And that 2nd edition really wasn't fun. Like, the rules were ridiculous. They were complicated. They were clearly written by, like, I don't know, a math wizard or something. But that wasn't us. We loved it because it was just something to like create a foundation for our gameplay. I like the changes in 3. I like the changes in 4th, and I hope they go back to that with whatever next edition of D&D they do. I hope they introduce. I like the reintroduction of new ideas and new systems that keeps it fresh while still being a D20 game.
So would you want it to be easy like 5th edition is, but with more complexity in the sense of like within the world and like the negative and positive energies being able to flank and putting more of those kind of aspects?
I do think, I think a lot there's the rules for complicating, let's say, the experience are vague, and I more than any other edition of D&D, there's no, in other words, with 5th edition I have homebrewed the most rules, and again, it's a lot of bias. I'm really backpedaling on old things I like from previous D&D or gameplay sessions, and I'm just constantly bringing them forward into future.
What if like the
gameplay.
next edition of D&D had like level system in the sense of a player? So there was like easy mode, medium mode, and then hard mode. So you could kind of
that's
like
what you had.
You could kind of like adjust and add more rules as your skill level goes up.
That's exactly
so
what.
you can.
Yeah.
You can like have now. Okay, so now that you understand the basics, you can now add flanking. You can now add different kinds of energy levels and different like negative energy, positive energy. So you could heal a bad guy or a negative creature with negative energy.
Well,
do you think that would be a good thing to like add new levels like that within the same edition? So you play like a couple sessions, you get familiar with it, then you go to the new level and you get familiar with that, and then you get more complex as it goes up. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that would
like
be
new rules open up as your character levels,
or as you level in general as a player? Like like you as a real person, as a real person, you now understand this concept. Okay, now that you're no longer a newbie, you can go to the medium level.
Yeah, I think
not necessarily just like level 1, level 2, level 3 for your wizard, but for you as a player, as a person.
I think I think you touched on a really good, strong idea, and I don't think, as far as I can recall, D&D has never done anything like that. I think the next the version of D&D should do something like that. I think when you hit level, because like what 5th does is when you hit level 2 and level 3, you choose your path for the type of class you're currently in, things like that. But I agree. I think as you level up, if you had to level your character in order to unlock, say, like flanking, right?
Okay.
Then that would start to introduce new rules to
I kind of like that too.
Well, it's your idea. I'm just refining it for you.
You're just you're putting it in a different perspective than what I was just thinking. But I really like that it's
because
like
I don't think D&D has done
character.
that. Other than with 4th edition, they had heroic levels and then epic and paragon, and they had it in 3.5 too. They had heroic. And
you
epic.
could become a god in the older editions.
You become a demigod. Like in 4th
edition,
edition, you basically become a demigod if you reach level 30.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I like that. I thought that was another cool thing about 4th. You're gonna hear whenever we talk about D&D, if we reference Fourth, you're gonna hear praise from me because I'm a big fan of Fourth, having played even like the old school D&D rule set.
Yeah.
I really love the idea of encounter abilities, at will abilities, daily abilities. It really broke down mechanically a way for people to understand the concept of having to rest to reclaim the energy, the endurance to do things in the gameplay.
Yeah.
I think maybe where they failed a little bit was those abilities had too much flair behind them, and so everything felt like a magical attack. I think that's where people kind of lost connection with their character there. Like even a fighter or a warlord, mechanically, some of the way the abilities operated felt more like magic than something physical. So I think maybe that's where some of the communication was lost with the player and the character and the rules. But the concepts for Fourth are excellent. That's what I really like, is how the systems operate themselves out of character.
Right.
And that's completely missing in Fifth. I feel like Fifth it's just so dry. It really is. It's a doctor's office. It's boring,
Yeah. But like I said, I think it is a good opener.
It is, and
for people who haven't played before.
It's still D&D, so I don't want to shit on it too much. Yeah. It does still bring people together to play, and really, there's got to be more people playing D&D now than ever in history.
I think you're right, because it's
exploded.
It wasn't cool, to play D&D. It was a nerdy kid game.
Oh, now, dude, you have no idea.
Now it's like everyone's playing. Actresses and actors are playing D&D. Like Hollywood stars are doing this.
Dude, you've got when I grew as a kid, when I was playing D&D with my friends, I felt like it wasn't conscious. We didn't talk about it, but we did keep it a secret from our other friends or from other people in school.
Yeah,
because you were just a total dork if you liked fantasy books and fantasy games, right? And I've told this to other people. Guys younger than me, that like you got it so good now. You can go to a comic, like when I went to like comic cons, conventions in like the 90s, like early 90s and late 80s as a kid, like a young teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you didn't see women scantily clad.
I don't think you would see a woman.
It was just a smelly event of like a sea of virgins, and it was just it was really kind of a terrible experience. But you went there because you wanted to see the merch and you wanted to meet like writers and artists. That's why I went. I didn't go there to like game or interact, even though a lot of people do that, and I'm glad they did. But now, if you go to a convention, it almost feels like a softcore porn, like convention, because it's just there's so much skin. I mean, there's so many females cosplaying now, and if you like guys, there's plenty of guys cosplaying too. So it blows my mind. I'm like, you guys have no idea like how lucky how good you got it. If you're in your early 20s now, it's like the golden age of
cosplay. Yeah, there's some real
of everything fantasy just all together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It has blown up, and it's no longer shameful, like you were saying, like you were scared to tell your friends about it.
Badge.
Now
people
it's like,
wear it proudly.
It's like, it's almost to the sense of like, I don't know, I feel like saying it like I'm a hipster saying this, but it's like not as fun now that everyone's doing it, but it's still cool.
It loses some of the cult
allure,
element, under the table element, like the back alley element it had. That's with anything.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like when something gets real popular, it's like, well, now I don't want to do this because it's just in my face too much. I just want to like back away from anything that's like just constantly bombarding me.
Too mainstream.
Yeah. Well, it's just because it's just everywhere. I do the same thing with music too.
Yeah.
If I hear, and that's why I don't listen to the radio anymore. It's because you hear the same songs over and over and over again. It's like, okay, I don't.
Oh, well, that's a whole other.
Don't care.
That's
anymore.
a whole other conversation. Is music? We'll have to do that sometime.
Right, but I mean, it's the same thing with like any game. If it gets thrown at me so much, it's like okay, I just don't care anymore. Yeah, it's oversaturated.
Yeah,
it's
totally
just
agree.
like I don't know. I like my nuance, if you will.
No, I agree. There's charm to that, and I mean, it's funny because I'm thinking about cosplayers again. It's like when I was a teenager, I never thought I'd see cosplayers that looked like they were in shape for the character they were playing or portraying. But now it's like, if I don't see a buff Superman or a buff He-Man, I'm like, oh, this guy's not even trying. He's not really cosplaying. It's like, dude,
you even lift, bro? Like, come on.
Yeah, like it's such a low effort thing, Like you just see some dude in a Superman costume, and his pork belly hanging out. But you're like, hey, he's a fan. That's what you do if you're a diehard fan. Now I question whether or not some of these cosplayers are even fans of the content that they're portraying.
They're just doing it for the likes on Instagram
doing it for the attention. Yeah. And I'm sure there's that too. There has to be, but whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants to feel that self-worth, and if that's how you're getting it, I guess that's what you're gonna do.
So if you're gonna cosplay, we're gonna pretend that we could get you to cosplay, Zach, and you are gonna cosplay as a D&D character, and it could be anything, a character you made or something out of the lore. What would you be?
I'd probably be some kind of tiefling or Cambion. I'd be demonic.
Demonic, of course.
I'd do something dark. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'd definitely be like a Cambion or a tiefling for sure. Something that's humanoid but yet demonic.
Would you marry a tiefling in real life?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Spend no time thinking about it.
That's like, oh man, that's one of my favorite things is like women that seem dark and then like, but they're still like sweet on the inside, and they're like, they're good to you.
They put up a strong guard to the world.
Right, but they're good to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's...
Oh, sure, that's perfect, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Because then that they've gone through some things, and they know how to persevere through it.
Or they haven't.
Yeah.
There's the dark side of that coin.
Yeah, but I don't look at that side.
Someone with not enough or very few life experiences is someone who can't make good decisions either, because they have nothing to compare to.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is that they have gone through some shit.
So you prefer, right? You want your tiefling to be, she's like an ex-stripper and hooker, and she's been a single mother twice, and hey, well, I mean,
doesn't have to be like,
she's got
just like,
she's got a spine, man, if she's been through that.
Yeah.
And after all that, she wants Zach the tiefling.
It'll be good stuff, though.
Yeah.
Now that's all I can think about. I want to get a demonic woman. All right.